How do you recruit and retain happy agents? I'm on a mission to answer that question by talking with the unsung heroes that empower real estate agents. I'm Seth Price. Tune in each week as I sit down with back office heroes to learn what's working and what's not. I'm going to talk about onboarding to retain agents. It's something that I've dealt with in my life. I've hired thousands of people. When I think about my past of hiring, I think in the beginning, I just hired nice people. At least that's what I thought. I was like, you're nice and you're charming. And certainly I didn't necessarily hire for background, but I could look back and say I found myself really being impressed by someone's background, and maybe I made a decision. But I'd say, one of the biggest things was that I was really only looking at hiring from my own perspective, which was, what did I need to get done? And I forgot what it's like from the other perspective, which is, what does this person need to accomplish in their career so they can move forward? And that was really, just a fundamental shift. Like, if you can't be a part of improving someone's journey, it's not really a great fit, because clearly they're looking for a job because they want to provide for their family, or, whatever that family may look like. But they don't just want to do what you want them to do. They have their own trajectory. And the goal of good hiring is to figure out, is the path that you're offering or that you can offer actually something that they want? And so, I always go back to, I know a bunch of folks in HR, worked with really great folks, worked with some really bad folks, but they all have the same mantra, which is, you only get one chance to make a good impression, and that impression really correlates to higher retention and productivity. And so when I think about the tips that I want to, and best practices that I want to talk about, I really want to start with, why is it critical? And I think it's a scenario that most brokers find so familiar. After finding, wooing, hiring, training, and supporting a quality group of real estate agents, a war of attrition begins. As those agents work with clients, close deals, and earn commissions, other brokerages, it's a competitive market, and they take notice, and that your crew is, in a word, better than theirs. And that may or may not be true, but, this is how brokerages grow, and they'll do whatever it takes to woo agents away from you, which puts you in this really, I'd say, unenviable position. And it's unenviable because you're going back to the hiring, recruiting drawing board, and recruiting agents is expensive. Even though there may be a managing broker that's super charming, and she's so good at, looking someone directly in the eyes and making them feel like they're part of a family, it takes a lot, right? And it takes a lot of time. It's a critical part of the business. But potentially even more critical is retention. And the reason that's critical, if you think about it, is you want to be able to instill loyalty in your agents so that they become essentially unrecruitable to other brokers. When you have to continually replace agents, agent after agent after agent, because they keep leaving for greener pastures, you're leaking both time and money that most brokerages can't afford to use. And so, surprisingly, I'll say it in my world, the solution to recruiting and retention, that problem starts when you first hire someone. And so, onboarding and orientation to help the agent feel comfortable, to give them the opportunity to hit the ground running, that will go so far to making that agent, instill or feel some sense of loyalty. And it's your chance to both, educate your agents on, how they can be most effective in their real estate career, and also explain exactly how your brokerage is going to support them in the journey, because that's part of the recruitment package. It's like, what are you going to do different than the competitor down the street? And, you know, it's really down to nuance at that point because there's tons of tools out there and everyone says, oh, we're going to do everything for you. But then, as you all know, there's certain levels of quality in delivery of that promise. And so, you know, I think about onboarding as part of a process. So, process driven onboarding serves the purpose. In addition to retaining your agents, it gives you the opportunity to methodically introduce them to a suite of technology tools, the products that you're going to use to help them do their job well. If you do recruit new agents, which you should make sure that that's actually who you want to recruit, and you have to make sure that you have the tools to help them learn the skills of actually practicing real estate. But part of that process of onboarding should make sure that that's their onboarding if they're that agent, if you're recruiting new agents as opposed to transfers. And also, when agents don't use the tech you're providing, it's like watching money spiral into endlessly down the drain. So, by incorporating your product suite into your onboarding, you'll see that what you get is there's so many ways for you to help them achieve their goals. And if you're utilizing ways to get feedback from them, then you can change your process so it's not like you're winging it. And we'll talk about what that means when I get there. So let's talk about the right fit from the start. I remember this was early on in my tech career, and I needed to hire someone in a marketing role. And so, you know, I was part of this process, did a lot of recruiting. Person had an amazing resume. Um, they were just toxic. Like they were just not the right fit. Even if they were so great, this person alienated every person in our company. And part of that, so when I think about the right fit, part of it's cultural, is like making sure that you're hiring for cultural fit in addition to everything else. But also, we talked about new agents, making sure that you're hiring people that you can actually support. So if you can't support new agents, like you don't have the time to show them how to do a listing presentation, how to respond to counter offers, how to do multiple offers. Like if you don't have the time to actually train someone to do that, it's going to be really frustrating for them. And so making sure that you're choosing the right person that you want to recruit and making sure that you have the tools to make sure that you can support them. Because the cost of a bad hire is always super extensive. And most companies don't know the full cost of turnover, so they don't apply any resources upfront to avoid it. If you make a bad hire, there's a ripple effect among all that work in your organization and your brokerage, and there's a ripple effect in your quality of service. It's like every brokerage has had an experience with hiring a person that wasn't a good fit. So how can a good recruiting organization ensure that she doesn't waste her time recruiting, interviewing, and making offers to the wrong people? So there's something that I throw out there. I don't have a great calculator. If it wasn't real estate, there's some great calculators for calculating the cost of a bad hire. But I think it goes something like this, which is, and I've done this for technology, which is where I work. Um, so if you think about it, there's a bunch of things that cost. There's recruitment advertising fees, staff time. There's training expenses. So you recruit someone, you've got to train them. There's negative impact on team performance if they leave or they are a bad fit. There's the disruption to incomplete deals, right? You got to hand this off to someone else? Is there, sort of customer experience problems? Lost customers, right? This person has a network that was going to be part of your brokerage. Service quality, and then we can broker brand. It's like you hire the wrong person, and then all of a sudden they're a representative of your brand, even though they're not fully trained. Maybe they're the wrong person, and they're out there sort of being the mouthpiece of something you worked so hard to build. So where I'd start, if I talk about the tips, is, you know, every broker that I've worked with is so process driven. And so the thing that I take out of that is plan a process that lasts for months, not weeks, and ideally up to 12 months. Onboarding is not the same as orientation. So if you think about orientation is, oh, here's the bathroom and here's, how you log on and here's your SSO and here's the basic tools that you're going to use. We've transferred your license. That's sort of orientation. Onboarding is making sure throughout the process that this person, this agent is engaged, they are supported, they can provide feedback. And with that time frame in mind, you can schedule regular check-ins to track how well they're doing at a particular stage. You can do that in a bunch of different ways. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And you can set tasks and connect those folks to partners. I'll talk about that in a little bit to make sure that their process of onboarding throughout your organization is one that's not solo and isolating. Because that's the worst thing when you start someplace new is you got recruited by the managing broker, super charming. And then all of a sudden you got handed off to someone else who may be super charming, but they're also super busy. And then all of a sudden you're sort of on your own because the other agents are busy. And that is like, no one likes that feeling in high school where you show up to the game and everyone's already playing. And you're like, I think I want to play, but they already got a part and you don't. That's the feeling that you want to avoid. So preparing that agent for the role, ensuring that they have everything they need to be productive, and orienting them with the company culture. Because as far as I can tell, in any company that I've worked for, is one of the biggest things that will instill loyalty is alignment with culture, is making sure that what you stand for and the culture that you embody as your organization is the thing that you're espousing and the thing that you're recruiting for. So the next one, make the process repeatable. The last thing you want is a Spengali of recruiting that keeps everything in their head. Because if it's not repeatable, it's not really a process. It's just sort of, it's jazz. Jazz is amazing. I love jazz. But you really want to have a process so you can figure out when it's working and when it's not. And you can improve upon the process. So automating the process as much as possible and design a process that can be repeated across your entire organization. So if, God forbid, something happens and your managing broker is sick and someone else needs to do onboarding, or the person who deals with recruiting and onboarding leaves and has to be replaced, you can still have a process that makes sure every new recruit gets treated the same way. So establish which connections need to be made, what timelines and milestones you want agents to reach, and most importantly, document everything so your team can fine tune the onboarding process as you collect feedback from those new hires. And so, one of our partners uses Notion. I don't know if you know what Notion is, and it's a note-taking app. One of them uses Asana. One of them uses Excel. One of them uses Google Docs. It doesn't matter what tool you use. What matters is that it's fully documented and that your back office team can all have access to that documentation. So number 3, which is the buddy system. The buddy system, at least in my experience when I was an agent, is really hard because it circles back to culture. If you don't have a culture where successful agents will open up and share, it is very difficult to implement a buddy system. But if you have a culture where that's a thing, and what's strange about real estate, not so strange. I mean, it's just different in real estate because everyone's their own business. And so, my experience, and this was quite a few years ago, my experience was an attempt at a buddy system was unsuccessful because the person that I was sort of partnering with was not interested in sharing anything of value to me. That's what I felt. I don't know. I know that that's not always the case, but I just want to point this out that a buddy system is not like a slam dunk if your culture's not right. So I want to point that out. But the simplest way to make new hires feel welcome, whether they're coming into your office or working remotely, is to set them up with a buddy in the office. Now, if you have a large enough staff, that buddy could be someone that's in the back office team if you have a large enough back office team. And then you don't have to put that responsibility on the other agents. If you do have a culture where the other agents are open to sharing information because they don't feel you know, a competitive threat by sharing information, then definitely pair them with someone that's more experienced because that's how we learn. We're sort of like, we parrot, we look at stuff and we parrot from the things that we see and we try and implement them, and it's never exactly the same. So, anyone who's afraid of competition, it's really hard for someone to mimic exactly what you're trying to do. Um, so, the other thing that I think about in this buddy system is, make sure that if you're going to do the buddy system, do it early because there's so many questions that arise during the first few weeks. Don't wait until weeks later. Do it when the new recruit actually has the time to pay attention. Otherwise, it's just sort of lip service. And so have the buddy make introductions, show them the lay of the land, maybe even, assist them on open houses, things that are just invaluable when you're starting out. Now, that may not be necessary if you're recruiting transfers, especially if you're recruiting successful transfers, may not need that. So keep all of those things in mind, but definitely if someone's joining your org and you want them to get a sense of the value, pair them with someone who already experiences the value, and then make sure that your culture is really open. Um, so the last piece, which I think is probably maybe the hardest, but also in many ways there's some automation that's possible, is keep checking it. And that's the thing that, I look back at the moments where someone that I really liked working with left, and I go, is there a way that I could have known better? And I think that there is, or maybe I could have seen some of the writing on the wall. But I think one of the things that I have bristled at is the sort of that one-on-one check-in. And not that I'm bristling at it because I don't want a one-on-one check-in. It's just that, you really want to be in a space where you can provide value for this person and you can help them move along in their goals. And at the same time, you've got stuff that needs to get done, right? You've got things you want their performance to improve. And so it does take a lot of work to check in regularly. But I would say don't wait for the 3-month mark to check in with new recruits. The best way to ensure that your onboarding process benefits new recruits is to check in with them regularly. Check-ins can come in many stages to establish enough time for new hires to get settled and ensure that they are, processing and sort of incorporating themselves within the brokerage. And you can conduct the first check-in in person, and that's ideal, right? Now that COVID's over. But subsequent check-ins can be performed by a manager or through questionnaires. So, one of the things that I've seen done really successfully is a new agent survey. We'll talk about surveys a little bit. Those are ways, one, you collect basic information about an agent so you can, put them on your website, your agent roster, all of those things, maybe their bio, you collect that personal stuff, but you can also find out why they chose you. And a survey is easier for them to answer those things than sometimes sitting in front of you. And it also allows you to collect information over time in a structured way so you can compare the things or the reasons why people are going with you as opposed to your competitors. So that's one. You can also do an annual survey. Um, those are great at the end of the year. How did we do? I'll talk about the different areas that you might want to focus on. And then pulse checks. Pulse checks are, I'd say, check-ins, which are every 2 or 3 months. I like to keep those short and simple, but those can be like, hey, how are we doing? You know, how are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10? Loving it here or not, right? Hate it here. Like those types of things. So you get a sense of if you have a 5 alarm fire that you need to pay attention to. So, at Placester, we've had the opportunity to work with tons of agents and brokers. And in those relationships, we found some consistent threads that come up again and again. So if you're going to do those check-ins, you want to ask about support. Do they have the tools, the technology, the training that the agent needs to do their job? This is a tough one, but compensation. Are they receiving the right split? And you can phrase that in any way you want. I know that can be the third rail, but you don't want to lose someone without knowing that that's the reason you're going to lose them. You sort of want to know ahead of time. Otherwise, it's too late, right? They let you know, oh, I'm already transferring my license. See you. Like that's not a fun experience. Do I have enough workload? Are there enough clients and leads so that I'm busy? And that can have a lot of manifestations. Maybe they don't know how to generate leads, but it points you in a direction that lets you know that maybe they don't know how to run a business. Marketing. Does my brokerage help me promote my business and build my personal brand? So there's lots of ways you can do marketing for your agents or with your agents or support them. All the way from concierge, we do everything for you, all the way to, hey, here's some tools we recommend, go figure it out yourself. And so there's a range there. You sort of want to get a sense of what people care about. And you may find that some people really want a lot of help. Everyone says they want to do marketing, but time is a challenge. And then lastly, professional development. Does my brokerage offer me opportunities to learn and grow? And that doesn't have to be just in the realm of residential real estate or commercial real estate. That can be in, community involvement. It can be in some other thing that you or your brokerage is really passionate about that is going to be valuable to this agent. And so, what we've seen is that the brokerages that succeed at satisfying these needs for its agents will just find it a lot easier to keep those agents, active and engaged and to attract new ones because, the goal is, as you know, is attracting ones that stay and ones that produce. And so, making sure that you get a finger on the pulse, you understand what's going on, you have a good onboarding process, and you can learn from the process that you've put together will allow you to evolve and also hopefully not have it be just, a game of juggling plates because the last thing you want is a process that's too complicated. So the better onboarding, the fundamentals of effective onboarding are the same, no matter what the role, what the company. All new hires should feel welcome, supported, understand their role and place within the organization, and feel excited about what's ahead. I mean, that's the job of the business. And agents should know which channels they can access to ask questions and find relevant information. I'll talk about that in another webinar, how to set up processes to do that. The process should include opportunities for informal connections between new hires and seasoned agents. The last thing you want is for a new hire to feel isolated and alone. The experience should be as seamless as possible with automated processes and workflows so that nothing gets left behind. And we can talk about automation. I think I might do an episode on automation. I'll take some feedback from folks if that's something they want to talk about, how to automate the processes that they already have checklists for. creating an excellent onboarding process requires trial and error. I mean, you know it. You've sort of done some of it, and if you're listening, it's probably because you think it could be better and you want to improve it. And so this process of really focusing on onboarding and orientation so that there's a process that's longer than 2 or 3 months, really ideally 12 months, with a mechanism for feedback will allow you to go so much further in tweaking that. And it won't just be like intuition, because intuition is great. And I love intuition. I'm a gut person. Data is really helpful, right? You want to make sure that you're matching your intuition with some relevant data so you can make some decisions. Yeah, that's it. I'm super excited. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. And I will see you next week.